The ancient cobblestones of the European University campus seemed to hum with tales of old, but for April, a bright and thoughtful student, her own story was just beginning to unfold. She was often seen arm in arm with John, a handsome and popular fellow, their laughter echoing through the grand archways. Everyone on campus, it seemed, adored them as a couple. "They're just perfect together, aren't they?" was a common whisper, followed by nods of agreement. April, with her quick wit and engaging smile, and John, with his easy charm and athletic build, certainly looked the part of the ideal university romance. Their relationship had blossomed in the vibrant first few weeks of freshman year. John, with his outgoing personality, had been the first to approach her, and April, flattered by his attention and the immediate approval of her new friends, had fallen into step quite naturally. Their dates were often group affairs, filled with lively discussions at bustling cafes or long walks through the picturesque city parks. Each time, the affirmation from their peers was overwhelming. "You guys are couple goals," someone would inevitably exclaim, and April would find herself smiling, a little shyly, but undeniably pleased. John, too, thrived on the validation. He'd often pull her closer, a possessive yet affectionate gesture that solidified their perceived status as the campus's golden couple. But, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect union, a subtle disquiet began to stir within April. It started subtly, a fleeting thought during a seemingly idyllic moment. John would make a joke that everyone roared at, but April would find herself forcing a laugh, the humour just not landing with her. Or they'd be discussing future plans, and while John's ideas were grand and well received by their friends, April felt a growing disconnect, a sense that their individual aspirations weren't quite aligning. Throughout this blossoming disquiet, there was Jack. Jack, with his quiet intensity and kind eyes, was always there. He was part of their wider circle of friends, often a silent observer at their gatherings. He'd listen more than he spoke, his gaze occasionally lingering on April for a fraction of a second longer than strictly necessary. April had always appreciated Jack's presence. He was the one who could be relied upon for a thoughtful insight during a study session, or a practical solution to a mundane problem. He was the one who remembered her obscure preferences for coffee or her favourite genre of obscure films. He never pushed, never vied for attention, simply was there. She began to notice how different her interactions were with John compared to Jack. With John, there was a performative element. Their conversations often felt like they were being watched, judged, and celebrated. She found herself subconsciously tailoring her opinions to align with his, or at least to avoid any public disagreement that might disrupt the carefully constructed facade of their perfect harmony. With Jack, however, there was an effortless ease. He listened with genuine interest, not just waiting for his turn to speak. He challenged her ideas, not to contradict, but to encourage deeper thought. He saw her, April, not just April, half of a lauded couple. The realization was a slow creeping tide, not a sudden wave. It began with small things. John would talk about his future, his voice brimming with ambition, and April would nod along, a hollow feeling in her chest. She found herself fantasizing about her own path, a path that felt increasingly divergent from the one John envisioned for them. The constant praise from others, once a source of quiet pride, now felt like a heavy burden, a societal expectation she was struggling to meet. Each compliment about their perfect relationship felt less like a genuine observation and more like a gentle, persistent push back into a box she no longer fit. One evening, after a particularly effusive round of compliments from their friends, April found herself alone in her room, staring at her reflection. Her smile felt fixed, her eyes a little dull. Was this truly happiness? Was this what love felt like? The answers that whispered back were a resounding no. The unsettling truth began to crystallize. She wasn't with John because she loved him, but because it was easy, because it was expected, because everyone else believed it was right. She was trapped in the gilded cage of peer pressure. As April's internal struggle intensified, Jack's presence became even more pronounced. He was her unwitting confidant, her unspoken support system. When she struggled with a complex academic project, it was Jack who spent hours with her in the library, patiently explaining concepts, never making her feel unintelligent. When she felt overwhelmed by the social demands of university life, it was Jack who suggested a quiet walk, away from the crowds, where she could simply breathe. He offered solutions, not platitudes. He offered genuine care, not just superficial concern. There was a memorable instance during a particularly stressful exam period. John, engrossed in his own studies and social commitments, had been largely unavailable. April, feeling overwhelmed and on the verge of tears, had bumped into Jack in the common room. Without a word, he had handed her a cup of her favorite tea, a small bag of her preferred dark chocolate, and a study guide he'd meticulously compiled. "You got this, April," he'd said, his voice soft, his eyes warm with encouragement. In that moment, a flicker of something new, something undeniably real, ignited within April. It wasn't the passionate fire she'd expected love to be, but a comforting warmth, a deep sense of being seen and understood. The university's annual prom night arrived, a dazzling spectacle of shimmering lights, flowing gowns, and sharp suits. The air thrummed with anticipation and a touch of nervous excitement. April, resplendent in a sapphire blue dress, arrived with John, who looked impeccably handsome in his tuxedo. As they entered the grand ballroom, the usual murmur of admiration followed them. "Look at John and April, the perfect couple." The whispers started again, but this time April felt a knot tightening in her stomach instead of the familiar rush of pleasure. The evening progressed in a blur of polite conversations and forced smiles. April found herself constantly searching the room for a familiar face, a sense of relief washing over her each time she spotted Jack, standing quietly by the punch bowl, observing the festivities. He offered a small, reassuring smile whenever their eyes met. Then came the moment. The band played a slow, romantic tune, and John, with his characteristic flourish, turned to April. "May I have this dance, April?" he asked, his voice clear and resonant, loud enough for those around them to hear. A collective awe rippled through the crowd. This was it, the public display of affection, the expected romantic gesture. All eyes were on April. She looked at John, his hand extended, his smile confident. She looked around at the expectant faces, the well-meaning smiles of their friends, and then her gaze drifted to Jack, who was still by the punch bowl, his expression unreadable but his attention clearly on her. A sudden fierce wave of clarity washed over her. The weight of expectations, the pretense, the silent agony of pretending, it all became unbearable. Her voice, when it came, was surprisingly steady, though a little shaky. "John," she began, and the music seemed to quiet, the crowd hushed. I can't." A ripple of surprise went through the onlookers. John's confident smile faltered. "April, what do you mean?" April took a deep breath, her eyes still fixed on Jack's now slightly widened ones. "I mean," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "I can't dance with you because I don't love you, John. And I haven't for a while." A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. John's face flushed. "April, what are you saying? Everyone thinks we're perfect." "And that's precisely it, John," April exclaimed, a newfound courage bubbling within her. "Everyone thinks we're perfect, but that's all it is, isn't it? What everyone else thinks. I've been so caught up in the idea of what we should be, what everyone expects, that I lost sight of what I actually feel. And I don't feel for you what I should. I've been living under peer pressure, and it's not fair to either of us." The silence in the room was deafening. John stared at her, his initial anger slowly giving way to a strange mixture of understanding and relief. He ran a hand through his hair, a faint, almost sheepish smile touching his lips. "You know what, April?" he said, his voice softer now. I think I know exactly what you mean. I was feeling it too. This whole perfect couple thing, it was exhausting. I was also feeling the pressure, trying to live up to what everyone expected. It's a relief to hear you say it. He let out a long, audible sigh. I guess we both got caught up in the hype. April felt a surge of unexpected warmth and gratitude towards John. It took immense courage for him to admit that, especially in front of everyone. "Thank you, John," she said, her voice genuinely tender. "Thank you for understanding." Their shared confession, far from being a dramatic breakup, felt like a joint liberation. The tension in the room, which had been thick with unspoken judgments, seemed to dissipate. Suddenly, the focus shifted. April, emboldened by the truth that had finally been spoken, turned her gaze fully towards Jack, who had slowly started to approach them. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a different kind of nervousness, an exciting, hopeful kind. "Jack," she began, her voice a little softer, a little more vulnerable. You've always been there. You've always seen me, truly seen me. You've helped me through so much without ever asking for anything in return, and I've realized that my feelings aren't for John. They're for you, Jack. They have been for a while. I was too afraid to admit it, even to myself." Jack, who had stopped a few feet away, his eyes wide with surprise and a blossoming joy, took a tentative step closer. "April," he said, his voice barely a whisper, I always hoped. I never said anything because I didn't want to complicate things, didn't want to disrespect your relationship with John, but I've loved you, April, for a long time." A collective murmur of delight, softer and more genuine than any previous applause, rippled through the room. Suddenly their friends, who had been holding their breath, broke into smiles. This wasn't a dramatic end, but a beautiful, honest beginning. John, surprisingly, was the first to speak, a wide, genuine grin on his face. "Well, what are you waiting for, Jack? Go dance with the girl." He playfully nudged Jack forward. Jack, a bashful but radiant smile now lighting up his face, reached for April's hand, her fingers intertwined with his, a perfect fit. As they stepped onto the dance floor, the slow music seemed to swell, taking on a new, vibrant meaning. There was no pretense, no expectation, just the quiet, undeniable joy of two people finally finding each other, truly and authentically. The rest of the night was a blur of genuine smiles, heartfelt congratulations, and an atmosphere of pure, unadulterated happiness. John joined their friends, laughing and chatting, his shoulders visibly lighter. He even shared a good-natured high-five with Jack, a silent acknowledgement of their shared, newfound freedom. As the prom wound down, April and Jack, their hands still clasped, found themselves at the edge of the dance floor, surrounded by their closest friends. The future, once a source of anxiety, now stretched before them, bright and full of possibilities. "So," one of their friends chimed in, "now that the truth is out, what's next for the happy couple?" April and Jack exchanged a joyful glance. "Well," April began, her eyes sparkling, "I think a trip is definitely in order. Maybe something adventurous?" "I was thinking the same thing," Jack interjected, his voice full of enthusiasm. "We could plan a road trip through the Dolomites. I've always wanted to go." "And we absolutely need to include our families," April added. "And all of you, of course. It's going to be an adventure for all of us." Their friends cheered, already brainstorming destinations and activities. The air was thick with laughter and excited chatter. The perfect couple had dissolved, making way for something far more real and meaningful. April and Jack, along with John and all their friends, were not just celebrating a new relationship, but a liberation from expectations, a triumph of honesty, and the joyous promise of a future built on genuine connection and shared happiness. The European University, with its ancient cobblestones, now held a new tale of true love, not of outward appearances, but of hearts finally aligning. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments below. Have you ever faced love under pressure? Share your story. We'd love to hear it. Like this video if you believe in honest love. Subscribe for more beautifully told stories of growth, love, and self-discovery. And don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Until next time.